Michael, maybe some chop, but I think the more prevalent narrative or scenario is to lighten up the portfolio, is to take profits ahead of what nobody really knows what he's going to say. He really, as I said in the CTV room earlier today, Powell is really has put himself, and he is alone to blame, really. He's put himself in this position because he has a tendency to be so data focused or data reliant that he keeps saying, well, we're going to wait for the data to come in. Well, the data's cooked, but you're going to wait for the data to make a decision? You did that before. And then we had inflation. And by the time you did, a rate hike, you were too late. And inflation, went higher. Then you paused it because you wanted to wait to see what the data would do. And now you're saying you want to wait and make sure that, because he doesn't want inflation to spike. He's concerned about the labor market. So I'm going to wait on the data. I'm going to wait on the data. If you look back in history to Fed chairs like Volcker, fell under a lot of scrutiny, a lot of pressure to make moves. He pulled back because of the peer pressure. But then he did the right thing, and Volcker defeated inflation. And Powell wants that to be his legacy, that he single-handedly did the right thing and beat inflation that was thrust upon him because of Trump, COVID, Biden, and Trump again. And yet he single-handedly did what the Fed is supposed to do with monetary policy and everything else, and he saved the world. That's his ego. That's Powell. But he's sitting there waiting and waiting and waiting and not taking decisive action. The markets don't like that. What if he says, you know what, I'm not going to make a decision on September. We were going to have 3 rate cuts. Didn't get it. Should have probably cut in July, but he didn't. He may not cut in September. He might say, I'm going to wait for data. Well, what happens if the data comes out, jobs report, and the next CPI, PPI come out super hot? Then what? Then the markets will crack because they know that he's going to say, absolutely, I'm not going to do a rate cut in September. Maybe December. Markets won't like that either. If he does rate cut, that ensures an inflationary pop. So he is damned if he does and damned if he doesn't. The markets know that. Long-term investors know that. And that's where we are. And that's why you're seeing a sell-off, because they realize that Powell has no good answers ahead of him. And so we just, prepare ourselves. The trades that I have on that I've been making money on, I'm not trading them because of what Powell will or won't do or uncertainty. I have that as a backdrop in terms of a narrative, but I'm trading the charts I see in front of me. For instance, AMD and Tesla. Tesla, I already showed you. But look at this, right? This is, so what am I looking for? Everybody see? What did I say before? The previous swing, right? Look. When did we get into AMD? Probably when we broke that. The AMD kind of this little topping pattern, right, that we see, did 2 things similar to Tesla. Broke that yesterday, didn't we? And broke the 20. So I'm shorting it. I'm still following my rules, even though, and I do have a trading plan. SMH 265. Well, before you do that, yeah, so and if you were looking at the technical aspect of this thing here, like, that's the number, right? So we almost hit it today. So what you want to see, if you wanted to trade this to the downside, almost lines up with the lower Bollinger here. But that's 279. So I think the easiest way to trade it, there's so many levels here, Michael. I think semiconductors are definitely in trouble, but I think you're better off with individual tickers, because once Nvidia falls back below a certain number, the algos are going to buy. And because they're so heavily weighted. Now, if Nvidia breaks 170, the semiconductors, they'll all go. But because Nvidia is so heavily weighted, you can't trade this right now. So you got to go with individuals, right? So because all it takes is a pump of Nvidia, and this will flatten out and come back up. These might be heading down, but if Nvidia pumps a little bit, that's going to keep this elevated. So I like the idea of sticking with the individual names versus the ETF. CMU is about to catch up to AMD. You see the same pattern or scenario where I think if you break this level, you could trade it down to here. That is a successful trade. That way I don't have to look at an ETF and worry about how low it may go and what will happen with NVIDIA. Trade the individual name. Yes, the whole sector is getting heavy, but if NVIDIA gets algo buying, if they start to pump NVIDIA when it drops to 170, the ETF is not going to drop as much as individual stocks. So that's my point.
Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video from Trade With Me Now. Make sure to go ahead and like this video and subscribe to our channel so you make sure that you catch our next video right when it's released. Also, if you have a question or comment, please leave that in the comment section below. And of course, if you want to learn more about Trade With Me Now or join our community of profitable traders, go to tradewithmenow.com. There's also a link in the description below.